Get ready. Helena Hustle is now live. Here, we will showcase successful leaders in business, athletics, healthcare, and all things that make Helena a great place to live. Join Dr. Daniel Bridge, owner of Endurance Chiropractic, as he searches out amazing individuals who are making a tremendous difference in this place we call home. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired with the Helena Hustle podcast.
Awesome.
David, will you introduce yourself?
I'm David Cronenwett. I'm the owner and lead instructor at Helena Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, also known as Helena BJJ, in Helena, Montana.
Where does your last name come from?
My last name is a German last name,
Okay.
though I have very little actual German ancestry in my ancestry, but that's what it is.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Let's start out with two truths and a lie.
Okay. Two truths and a lie.
Do your best.
I will.
Do your worst.
I'll try to stump you. I have been training jiu-jitsu for 27 years. I once worked as a consultant for a well-known wilderness survival show on the Discovery Channel. And I also train Muay Thai, kickboxing, regularly every week.
Okay. I'm going to say that, I'm going to say that you do not train Muay Thai.
You're right. Although we do have a Muay Thai program at the academy now.
Really?
So that was a little plug for it.
Who's teaching that?
It's Coach Chris Moosman. He's a phenomenal instructor. Do you?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Mm-hmm. Great guy. His kids were training jiu-jitsu with us, and he just always sat there in the corner and kind of just mind his own business. And then somehow it came out that he was a Muay Thai instructor. And
he's like a quiet, dangerous guy.
Very, very much so. You look at Chris, yeah, that's exactly what you get. And sweet guy.
Right.
And I do not train Muay Thai. Those guys could punch a hole right through me.
Yeah.
The training that they do is vigorous and intense. It's a great program. And just getting off the ground.
Is that included with the membership, or is that
it's actually a separate membership? If you have a jiu-jitsu membership, you can do a small add-on fee.
Nice.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
So
kicking trees and whatnot.
Not quite kicking trees.
I watch those guys, and I'm like,
in Thailand.
wow.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah.
Yeah, like how they build up their shin bone.
Yep. They have a pretty short career too.
Really?
I can guarantee you. Yeah. It's just that kind of training is too intense for competition. But
I was watching, my feed knows me, and it popped up this kickboxing match between two of the highest, and it was insane. It was, a lot of elbows, and I just kept hearing that, thunking of bone on bone, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So, that's great. What a good add-on.
Yeah, it's a really natural mix, and
Have you done much Muay Thai?
Very little. It's just that the overtraining thing. I have to. I'm training so much, teaching so much, and doing my own strength training regimen to prevent injury.
Yeah.
That adding on another thing is, I could probably find a way to do it.
Yeah.
But with all the other issues running a small business, as you know, I just haven't jumped in yet.
So you're how old?
I will be 54 next month.
54. Look great.
Yeah, thank
you. You obviously have your gym, probably your top priority, but you're training. Do you have any goals or things that you're working towards specifically?
For my own training?
For your own training, for your own
That's a very
jiu-jitsu.
Good question. I definitely believe in continuing to grow. As I've been in this journey for almost 30 years now.
Yeah.
It's very easy to get into ruts.
Yeah.
And I think as we get older, even more so, just sort of, you just get into patterns, and it's path of least resistance. And so in jiu-jitsu, probably with any sort of practice, there's sort of two ways to think about growth. In a jiu-jitsu, it's like you can learn a bunch of cool new things, which there are seemingly endless supply of out there. Some of them are junk.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are just fun to learn.
Yeah.
Some of them are more sort of competition oriented and not self-defense. So there's all these sort of the new flashy stuff, right? So it's always evolving.
Right.
And there's definitely benefit into learning some of that stuff. There's also the other angle, which is, polishing what you know and depth and detail.
Right.
Right. So, small little variations of a setup that you hadn't really seen before. Yeah. Interesting, combinations that maybe are sequences that you hadn't really known of before. And those things you get from other people, from other black belts, from not necessarily a black belt, but people who have a lot of experience. And that's where sort of the community piece, comes in. So getting out there, training with other people, hearing what they have to say. Yeah. So my goals are some of each. I think some people in one camp, all they want to do is like all the cool fancy stuff.
Sure.
The other camp is all they want to do is just these fine little details and stuff. And you don't have to choose. You can do both. I'm a big believer in kind of integrating balance. Yeah. So, and it keeps it interesting, just to keep it interesting, if nothing else.
And everybody's at a different place. Like that's something, I know you're talking about jiu-jitsu, but that applies to so many things. And it hits so hard for me in my business because I, as an owner of my business, I love the freedom and the flexibility to learn something new, to try something new. And what has happened to a lot of people that are like me is that, is it called neophilia? Just that love of learning something new.
Sure.
And so I've had times, and I still deal with this, where I've got books and I've got trainings and I've got, a class that I went to and I've just got all this great new stuff I'm learning, but I never take the time to actually
really get into it.
Actually put it into practice.
Yep.
And I read a story yesterday about two fishermen. One spent 6 months just learning everything there was to know about fishing. He bought the best boat, the best equipment. He watched all the training videos on how to bait a hook and how to, how to move if you're not finding fish. And finally he got into the water after 6 months and he couldn't catch any fish. Whereas the other guy started 6 months ago just fishing and trying different things and learning different things, and he caught all the fish, and that's why the other guy couldn't. Now obviously it's not exactly how it works, but you have to put in the work.
Absolutely.
Instead of just learning fun new ideas.
Right. Yeah. And if you are running an academy, in my case, there's a lot of responsibility and it's just hours in the day, and like sometimes you just need that downtime. And I should be working on myself. I should be doing, professional development. I should be going to seminars. Yeah. It's just like sometimes I just want to read a book and go for a hike in the mountains and just, to recover from all the, the stresses of the gig. So that's okay too.
Absolutely. That's another thing I've been thinking about. As an entrepreneur, we're kind of wired to go,
right.
Get stuff checked off, accomplish things, grow.
Yep.
And by doing that, we sacrifice other things.
Absolutely.
Downtime, meditation, time with family.
Yeah.
There's what's more important than that?
Exactly.
You can't just sit around all day, but I don't think we have enough balance.
Absolutely. And it's like, it's the hardest thing. It's easy to throw that out there. I do it all the time. Our logo for the academy is kind of our modified, yin and yang looking symbol. And, but it's the hardest thing to achieve, and it's never an exact,
right.
It's this shifting target, right?
Yeah. Right.
But what else are you going to do?
Yeah.
You have to kind of strive to balance all things in your life.
Absolutely.
As best as possible.
So tell me about this Bear Grylls who cannot be named.
Oh man, I've been out of the survival kind of world for a while. But it was, I actually had a business.
Really?
Where I was teaching bushcraft and wilderness survival.
Wow.
Yep.
We got to bring that to Helena.
Yeah, I know. I was actually teaching through Helena College for a while. Through their continuing ed program. But anyway, it was a big part of my life. And if you live long enough, you realize you can't do everything. And so focus
It's a sad thing to realize.
Yeah, I know it is, right? But the outdoors generally is still very important to me. And, I'm not going to comment necessarily on what I think about a lot of the survival shows, although working on that one was very eye-opening, let's put it that way.
Disappointingly so?
Yes, as you can imagine. So
I saw one where it was like this was Bear Grylls, and it was a picture of like beautiful background out in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And then someone actually lined up exactly where he was, and they just panned the corner a little to the left. Mm-hmm. It was right next to a major highway. Yep. And it's like, all I guess, time. It's a show, it's entertainment. Right. You got to put that in there. But, talking about not being able to do everything, my sad realization was me and my dad bought like a wind kite to like go kite skiing. Mm-hmm. And we went out one day and tried to do it, and it wasn't good conditions. But it took us about an hour to go where we wanted to go. Struggled for an hour, didn't make any progress. And that's when I realized, like, if I actually wanted to learn how to do this, I would have to quit snowboarding, mountain biking, exactly. Reading, and dedicate all my time to that. And life is, you just don't have enough time to learn all the cool stuff there is out there.
And it's funny, like, being a parent, and seeing like your kid that wants to do everything. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then having them running into the wall of reality and realizing they can't do everything is like, it's sad and kind of amusing. Yeah. At the same time, it's like, yep, been there. Yeah.
No, you haven't, Dad. I'm the only one learning this lesson.
That's right.
Yeah. So did you say 27 years of training?
I began my jiu-jitsu journey in July of 1996 in Seattle.
Will you take us through your journey from how you learned about it, how it progressed, how you started Helena BJJ, or how you got there, and then where you're at today?
Sure. So as a kid, I had trained karate, which I enjoyed. I grew up in New Jersey. I moved
Jersey Shore. Great show, right?
I moved to the Pacific Northwest when I was 19 to go to music school in Seattle.
Nice.
Studied music. Was an amazing experience. For one thing, being in Seattle in the early 90s and just the whole scene there was quite something. Right. The music, the culture, the whole bit. It was the center of the universe. Wow. It was pretty wild. I actually remember getting there and walking around Capitol Hill neighborhood where I was living and being like, I feel like something is going to happen. That was literally the thought I had in my head. And then Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Soundgarden.
Oh, this was before
bands exploded. Yeah, I mean, it was before. It was emerging when I got there, but when it really exploded.
Cool.
So being in the middle of that, so studied music. Got my degree, very quickly realized it was a classical guitar major. It was a minor in composition. I'm like, you know what? There's no way I'm going to pursue this as a career. And it's just a very hard way to make a living.
Sure.
So I'm living in Seattle, kind of working odd jobs. And at some point in there, I saw a videotape this is probably around 94, I think, 1994, of the second UFC. Ultimate Fighting Championship. And I was like, what is this? This is incredible. This little guy, Hoist Gracie, is like beating up these huge dudes.
How big was he and how big
he was? About 180. So about what I am. I'm about 175. And
he's beating up big muscle-bound 250-pound guys.
Sure, yeah. Large guys with all these different styles and stuff. And they're throwing punches and he's taking him to the ground and choking them out, submitting them, arm bars, the whole bit. It was mind blowing. Yeah. It didn't seem possible. And I remember walking around one day and I saw a flyer that said Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is here. And I was like, whoa, I know what that is. Yeah. But I did not have the courage to call the number or go to the academy for months, And I eventually did. I went in, and it was a very rough 4 to 6 months. Those first months there were I was getting my butt kicked. Those days, those years ago, where it was a different scene. The culture was less developed. It was like a Wild West, and so and I'd never wrestled. I was this skinny kid, and one day I had someone in the guard position. And I remember I threw an arm bar on him from the bottom, and I had this realization. I've told this story many times, but it's true. It's like, oh, that's what it's about. You're in the moment. It's that flow state where your body, your mind, the movement, that person's energy, your energy, it's all coming together into one thing. And it was like, bam.
Yeah, that had
something.
Felt good.
Yeah, a switch went off in my head. I've seen this in my own students before. And it's usually not just a one-time thing. It starts happening in these very kind of random moments. But you really do need those, especially early on, to motivate you. And so,
how long do you feel
ahead.
like that takes for your average student who's just getting started?
That's a good question. I think it really depends on the individual, but hopefully you're going to get some of that within the first 6 months. Because
6 months, that's a long
jiu-jitsu
time.
is really hard.
Right.
It's, this is not like, it's a very physical activity. It's very emotional, and it's going to push your buttons in every way. And so you have to have some little successes here and there on the way. So I trained for about a year while I was in Seattle, and the background to all this is that I'm doing a lot of road trips out to Montana, falling in love with Montana. I'm moving to Montana.
Right.
So moved to Missoula in '97, and I continued to come back to Seattle to train. So I had ranked up to blue belt about that time, and which is the first sort of real belt in jiu-jitsu for adults, and I had nobody to train with in Montana, really. And so I was like, what am I going to do? I can't just keep running back to Seattle to go train with my people. So I'll just open a small academy. And it didn't go very well, from the business standpoint. I had some people come in, had some wrestlers or some judo guys, curious people, but this was just not on the map yet. It was not in the cultural milieu. And there were no podcasts back then. The internet was just getting off the ground.
Everybody knows what jiu-jitsu is now.
Oh, everybody.
And that wasn't the case.
Right. And so basically within that first year of trying to actually run a business, went down, and I swore I would never charge for it again. I'm going to give it away, and so I'm like, teaching people in the park and in the garage and in the basement and wherever, the dance school, like it was very.
Were you still a blue belt at this point?
I was a blue belt for a long time.
And can you walk us through the progression of
so
belts?
the main belts are white, blue, purple, brown, and black.
Are there other belts? When you say main
some
belts?
people, right? So some lineages use a green belt as an adult belt between white and blue.
Okay.
As sort of an intermediary. And, why would you do that? Well, again, jiu-jitsu is very hard. And sometimes it's good to have milestones that you can reach for, right? And I never grew up with that. We do that now at my academy.
Green belt? Gotcha.
As an adult belt, as a stepping stone to blue belt. And it's working rather well.
This is something I'm planning on doing in my future. So average, I know everybody's different, but time, if you're training twice a week, you're progressing as you normally should. Time from starting to green and then from green to blue. Is that too hard of a
boy, to do the math this early in the morning would be kind of challenging because everyone's different. But basically, I'll say to blue is about a year to a year and a half. Okay. And green belt is an intermediary step in there. It just depends on how much you know, how many classes you're attending, stuff like that. So we have a whole system at our academy.
Very cool.
So
so you were training in the parks.
Yep. And I was moving around Montana. moved up to the Yak Valley, lived in a yurt off the grid for a year and a half, 2 years ish. Moved down to Troy, Montana in the Northwest. Moved to Dillon was next for a couple of years. Shoto for almost 8 years, and then I moved to Helena full time in 2014.
Wow. Okay.
So all over the place.
Yeah.
And literally, and I'm trying to maintain, my skills and coach and also, so it was a very nomadic journey for me. So should I keep going with with that journey?
Yeah.
Okay. So 2013. So it was very hard to rank up in those days. There was one or two black belts in the state who could promote you, right, at that time. And pretty much everybody of my generation here in Montana had connections with those couple of black belts.
Okay.
So I'm a brown belt in 2013, and I started making connections to the jiu-jitsu and grappling community here in Helena around then. And 2013, there was a new academy called Helena Brazilian Jiu Jitsu that existed here. I was coming down to train here. I moved to Helena in 2014, and I got my black belt through that school in 2015.
Nice. How did that feel?
It was pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
So your average path to black belt in any normal, by today's standards, is about 10 years, give or take.
And this was
19 and a half, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but who's counting, right?
Well, right. That's
So,
not really the point, but it's still something you're working for and hoping for.
And I was, certainly one of the first people to bring it to Montana.
Nice.
So I don't know if I was the first academy in Missoula in 97, but it was very limited in the state.
Yeah.
So I guess that's something,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, I get to black belt. I'm still training at this school, and the previous owner moved away in 2016, and we had a small group of people, dedicated but small, like 10, 12 people, and I was the highest rank. I was the only other black belt, and so they're all looking at me like, "What are we gonna do?"
Right.
So I very reluctantly decided to jump into starting another school and hoping that this would not burn to the ground. He handed it over to me.
Yeah, he's like, "Hey, please."
Yeah, there wasn't a lot. There were some mats and the name, and so and you have very dedicated people. I didn't want to see this.
Was that a hard choice at the time? Did you have another job?
I did. I was working. Yeah, I was doing communications work for a nonprofit conservation organization, and I had that early failure in my head from the 90s.
Yeah,
I do not want to lose that much money again.
Right.
Yeah, losing a business is a horrible experience, and even though it wasn't a large business, it was my baby, and it didn't survive.
Right.
So it was a huge leap of faith, and we rented a space on Euclid Avenue, on the west side of town, and it grew a little bit, and I have to attribute some of this to, the Joe Rogans, the UFC.
It's the best thing that ever happened
Jocko,
to you.
Zuckerberg now.
Yeah.
they're all training. It's not a secret. Everybody knows what it is, more or less. And the phone started to ring,
Did you, when you said, I'm going to do this, did you have to give up your communications job?
So I for 4 years,
you did both.
I did a full-time job.
Oh my gosh.
40 hours a week, and ran the academy. And I had help. I had coaches that taught classes here and there for sure, but I was doing the lion's share of that work.
What a terrible idea.
It was horrible. And I was teaching early morning classes, the whole bit. So I don't know how I did it, to be honest, Daniel.
Just hearing you say that.
Yeah, it was unbelievable, and trying to be a parent and all this stuff. So so there's, I guess, more to the story than that. It was October of 2019. I turned 50, and I'm like, okay, I'm at a spot where quit the day job.
Yeah.
This is awesome. Did it. Boom. COVID's coming. And I was tracking the news on that. I'm like, if this comes to the U.S. in a big way, like jiu-jitsu is done. Like, it's a close contact,
Coughing in each
activity.
other's
Yeah,
face the whole
exactly.
day.
Yeah, the whole bit. It's a very physically intimate,
Yeah.
pastime or combat sport. And so we know how that all went.
Did they shut you down?
We closed for a little over 2 months.
Wow.
And then we opened. And
Did you get pushed back when you opened?
no,
Nice.
we didn't. And then we were kind of the lease was coming up at that space on Euclid, and we found a new building, much larger space down on Cherry Avenue, 5,000 square feet.
Nice.
We built it out in July, August of 2020, opened the doors in September, and that's our current location.
Heck yeah.
So
5,000 square feet. That's great.
Yeah, we have 2,100 square feet of mat space, a big mat, a small mat. We have a weightlifting facility in there. It's weight training business is a separate operation.
Got a shower.
Yep, absolutely.
People can go straight to work after
That's
class.
right. That's right. Yeah. So it's a good setup, and we have the best part of it is, of course, the people.
Yeah. Tell us about your mission, your goals. I mean, obviously you want to train people in jiu-jitsu, but it's a lot bigger than that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, many people, I don't know, they may think they have a reason or one or two reasons to come in there. And often it's something like, I want to learn self-defense. Great. We do that here.
Yeah.
I want to get into shape. Those are two of the top reasons, understandably, right?
Those would be my top two reasons.
Yeah, for sure. And those are great reasons. And then after, if you stick with it, 6 months, a year, a couple years, it's like you realize there's other reasons you're there. And they may be, through the physical learning of the art and the technique and the struggle and there's just, you're working on your stuff, and I've seen it all. It's like, I've seen people with, anger management problems, depression, anxiety, like, being too passive, too aggressive, being, you name it. Like all of our demons we bring to the mat. And boy, those things often come out on the mat.
Yeah.
And it's when I finally realized that's what we're really doing, it added a completely different dimension. It just, like, this is work to make better people. So it's not the only thing. I mean, people need, again, that balance. You need to have these other elements in your life, and like we have a number of veterans there. Of course, PTSD, of course, is something we hear about all the time with veterans, and there's actually some relatively new science. There's a study from a university in Florida. There's since been a couple of other studies about specifically PTSD, depression, and addiction in veteran populations, and jiu-jitsu as a tool.
Wow.
In addition to traditional therapy and other things, talk therapy. And they're showing that, guess what? Big surprise. This has a very important effect on reducing many of those, mental illnesses. And so, and you might say, well, why is that? It's, being active is important. It turns out we need to use our bodies.
Yeah.
The physical strain of jiu-jitsu is very good for us, but also, the community and being around others, so important. Plus, just having a practice, learning. There's this infinite quality to something like jiu-jitsu, like something it would be akin to music, learning about philosophy or science or natural history. Like, these things can kind of go on forever,
right.
And sometimes that blows people's minds and they don't want anything to do with it. But a lot of people, the people who stay, tend to have that path, that infinite path, you know. and you're always improving, and you're always learning something, and sometimes you feel like you're lost, but you keep going.
Yeah. Here's a question. So back to when you're talking about why is this so effective for people's psyche and their mental, emotional, spiritual side. You know, I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, but you talk about how many people go throughout a day or a week or a month without getting hugged or really touched by other humans.
Yes.
And I mean, that has to be a component, even though
For
maybe you're
sure.
getting choked, but any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Certainly. So it's this interesting mix. We do need physical contact, and it's interesting to see people who are new. I'm thinking of a couple of really new students recently. They're just like, you're trying to show them how to just do a basic pinning position on someone else.
Yeah.
And they're just, it's just very delicate. Like they don't want to like put their weight on them. And it's like, and I get it. Cause it's like, it's very physically intimate. You're going to touch bodies in ways that we don't usually do that in polite society. Right. But it's, you have to get over that. And once you get over it, it all makes sense. The physics don't make sense if you can't get past that barrier. And then it's like, oh, we're all just sort of just hugging each other on the mat. And yes, it has a self-defense application. You're trying to, restrain a fully resisting person. So it's this weird mix of like, it's this kind of play, which is super important for humans and all animals. There's this playful element, but there's also this sort of violent side to it. And there's that yin yang again. It's two sides of the same coin in a way. And so, it's competitive, it's supportive, it's playful, it's violent. It's it's all of these things. But the human community piece, that physical touch, the physical exertion, the shared suffering of being in an environment that it's hard, or struggle is good. The work is the reward. Right. And that's once you make that shift, there's kind of no going back. So
cool. David, I'm so excited to at some point come learn.
Absolutely.
If somebody wanted to sign up or even just learn more about the Academy, Jiu-Jitsu in general, how do they find you? What would you recommend for first steps?
I would recommend looking us up via our website, which is helenabjj.com. You can also search Instagram or Facebook for Helena Brazilian Jiu Jitsu or Helena BJJ. We're located at 1350 Cherry Avenue in town, and we do offer a free class.
Nice.
Trial class. We also offer Muay Thai, kickboxing, if you're into that. But most of our people are jiu-jitsu students. And so the best way is just to come down and either observe a class, come talk to us, hang out, feel the vibe of the community, and then take a class and see what you think.
And if you want someone to take a class, better that they contact you ahead of time.
It's a good idea to let us know you're coming down so we can.
If somebody's just going to come observe, do you still want that heads up?
I mean, it's always good, but people are willing to just come down and check it out anytime.
Cool.
Our schedule is on our website. We have morning, noon, and evening classes, and a Saturday morning open mat.
Okay.
So,
good. Well, hey, thanks so much, David. Appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Thanks, Daniel.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Helena Hustle Podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. Once again, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you in the next episode of the Helena Hustle Podcast.